It's so cool that Taylor Reiner made these games. He knows a lot about trick-taking.
And look how small these boxes are.
The art is cute, but what a weird name. Of What's Left?
Short Zoot Suit. That is a really cute bear.
Wait a minute. Of What's Left? Those initials spell owl. It's a game about owls.
So that must mean that Short Zoot Suit spells bear. No, wait.
That's weird. Why wouldn't they both spell the name of the animal?
Man, I thought I could trust Taylor, but he clearly doesn't know how to spell bear.
They must spell bear differently in Oregon.
That might be it.
Wait a minute. Can you hear my thoughts?
No.
Okay. Good, because that would be weird.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Mike DiLisio.
And I'm Chris Yi.
And we're coming to you today with a review of two small card games by one designer. We're going to be talking about the trick-taking game Short Zoot Suit and the shedding game Of What's Left.
So the designer of these two games here, Taylor Reiner, is someone I follow on YouTube, met at conventions and stuff. Someone I would consider a friend, so keep that in mind. But his YouTube channel specializes in trick-taking games, Taylor's trick-taking table. So when I heard that he was having these two games come out, to be completely fair, the expectations were very high.
That's correct.
You specialize in something, and then you come out with a game in that genre.
That is true. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be riding on a wave of saying, these better be good.
It takes some guts, it really does, and these are his first designs, although not the last. We'll talk about that in a minute or two. But yeah, I had high expectations as well, and we'll talk about whether they met those expectations or not. But first, I should probably tell you how these games work. Okay, here we see the setup for a 4-player game of Short Zoot Suit. What you do at the beginning of every round is you look at your hand of cards, and you're going to remove 5 from your hand, shuffle them together, and place them face down under your draw deck. At the beginning of every trick, each player has the option of drawing a card from their draw deck before they play into the trick. So let's take a look at Fairy Cellist here. We look at these cards. We say, all right, is there anything we can probably short suit? I see 2 spades, 3 spades. Yeah, maybe we'll get rid of the spades here. And what else? Not a lot of clubs, so we'll get rid of a jack of clubs. And we're left with hearts and diamonds only. Maybe we want to get a high diamond and do that. So you would take your cards that you chose, you'd shuffle them up, and you place them face down beneath your draw deck. Short Zoot Suit is a trick-taking game that is a must-follow trick-taking game. That means that whatever the led suit is, if other players have cards with that suit, they must play them. If they don't have a card of the led suit, then they can play whatever they want. The highest card of the led suit will win the trick because there is no trump card, or no trump suit, I should say. All right, let's say the first player is Fancy Feast Savory Puree Naturals with natural salmon and tuna in a demi-glace. They take a look at their deck. Actually, before they take a look at their deck, any of the players could choose to draw one of these 5 draw cards, the top, into their hand. But in the first hand, you're not likely to do that. So, all right. Fancy Feast looks and says, hey, maybe I want to short suit myself on clubs. So they go ahead and lead out the club. So that is the led suit. Kenny takes a look at his hand, and if he has a card of the led suit, he has to play it. Well, Kenny has a couple. Maybe Kenny decides, I don't want to win this trick this early. I want to kind of save it for later. So they play out their 6. Next up, we have the Peruvian Lentils, and they take a look at their cards. And they say, okay, I've got 2. I can win for sure, or I can actually, this is a 1. Do I want to play 1 or 2? It doesn't matter. I'm losing this trick regardless. So they would go there. Now we come to the Fairy Cellist, and they look at their hand, and they short-suited themselves of clubs at the beginning. So they choose that they're going to get rid of another card, and maybe they just throw in that 3 of hearts. All right? In this case, the winner of the trick is going to be Fancy Feast because they have the highest card of the lead suit. So they're going to collect all the cards except for the off-suit card. Okay? When they keep their tricks, they'll keep them somewhere by them. And this player, the fairy cellist, will keep a face-up off-suit pile, okay? Because again, the point behind the game is that you win as many tricks as short-suited cards that you have. So players are going to continue to play tricks until one player is out of cards in their hand. Not necessarily in their draw deck, you can still have cards in your draw deck, but if there's a player with no cards left in their hand, that's going to trigger the scoring. You get a little bit of a helper here on your card, and it tells you that scoring is 1 point per trick standard. It's actually 3 points per pair of 1 tricks and short cards, and can get up to 5 points per pair of tricks and short cards if that's exactly balanced. There's also an intermediate scoring card that you'll draw at random, and it's going to be based on cards that are in your shorts pile. So, for example, there's a whole bunch of these intermediate scoring cards, but they recommend you start with this first one, which is simply check the number of unique suits in your shorts pile and get an according number of points. So, let's take a look here. Here with Fairy Cellist, they won 2 tricks and shorted 3 cards. So 2 points per trick, 1, 2, 3 points per pair, 3, 6, and then the intermediate scoring, there is 2 unique suits, so 8 points. Next up, Fancy Feast has won 3 tricks and they have 4 shorts. So they're going to get 3 points for the tricks won, and they're going to get 3 points for each pair, so 9 for the pairs of tricks and short cards. So 9, 11, 12, 13. We look at the number of suits. There are 4 plus 8. It's going to be 21. Kenny here did really well. He won 4 tricks and has 4 cards in the shorts pile. So going to get a lot of points here. We get 4 points just from the 1 tricks. Then we're going to get 5 points per pair because they're equal numbers. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 24 plus the 2 unique suits is another 2. So 26 points for Kenny. Looking here at the Peruvian lentils, we have 3 1 tricks, 1 pair. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the intermediate scoring, only 1 point, that is 7. You're going to play the number of rounds per number of players. Then you're going to total up the scores, and the winner is the one with the most points. Of what's left is a climbing or shedding type game, and the deck makeup is as follows. You have 4 suits going from 2 to king or 2 to 13. When you're playing with 3 players, you just would remove one of those suits and you play with 3 suits. In this game, players are going to be playing out melds onto the table, and there are 3 valid types of melds. First, you've got singles. You just play a single card to the center of the table. Or you could have sets of any length, for example, 2 5s. Or you could have suited runs of any length, so perhaps 10 Jack Queen. All of those would be valid melds. After a meld is played to the table, the players that follow have an option to either pass or to play a higher value of the same type of meld. So in this case, we've got a run of 2 5s. Another player could come in with 2 10s and have a higher value than that 5. It's the same number of cards and the same type of meld. If a player does pass, they still have the option to come back into the round later as long as this card is facing this side where you says you may pass. I'll show you how you can get to the point where you cannot pass. Before I start to show you a sample round, I want to talk about the hook in this game. In most shedding games, what you're trying to do is be the first one to go out, i.e. play all of your cards. But this is a twist. The hook of this one is that you do not want to be the first player to go out because that player will score 0 points. Ideally, what you want is to have the fewest cards left in your hand when another player goes out, and ideally of the highest value. So scoring is -1 point per card left in your hand, plus a possible bonus points of the lowest ranked cards if you have 5 cards or fewer. All right. We have wilds that we're going to be talking about in a minute that are considered 1 to 14 in any suit, and you would declare what they are when they're played. At the beginning of the game, everyone's going to have an ace and a special card face down. They just act as wilds. These special cards can actually be used in a variant as well. All right, so let's look at a sample round here. Let's say that Delectable's Lickable Treat Stew with chicken and beef non-seafood recipe is the first player. They'll look at their hand, and they probably would have it organized a bit better than I do right now. But let's say, for example, they want to put out a set of 5s. All right, so they toss this meld onto the table. Now, following players can either pass or they can play the same type of meld of a higher value. So let's take a look at what Cactus has in their hand. Quickly, it looks like, yeah, they can play a couple of queens. All right, so they do that. Now we come to That's It, Organic Crunchables, Apples and Bananas, only 2 ingredients. And let's take a look at theirs. They'd have to have a pair of kings, essentially. Do they have it? They do not, so they are going to pass. Now, they could have played one of these wild cards as another king if they chose to, but they decide that they want to wait until later in the game to use their wilds. Now it comes to the €2 coin. Do they have a pair of kings they want to play? They do not, so they also pass. When every player but one has passed, that's going to trigger the end of the round. These cards get discarded, and whoever was the last player with cards will lead the next trick. Okay, so let's say it's later in the game, and Cactus has 4 cards left in their hand, so they had to flip their card over. They can no longer pass. Even if they had a wild card, they'd have to play it, but they are eligible now for that bonus of the lowest suit or the lowest value still left in your hand when someone else goes out. Over here, Crunchables has 4 cards in their hand, so they are also flipped over. The €2 has 6 cards left in hand, so they still have their card here. And Delectable's Lickable Treat Stew also has 6 cards in hand, but let's say that they were leading this next meld. They might say, all right, I'm going to lead out with this king. Now I've got 5 cards in hand. Flip this over, and now I cannot pass. Okay, let's say that Cactus here was the first player to play out all their cards. That triggers the end of the round. They're not going to score any points because they have no cards in their hand. Over here at the Crunchables, they have 4 cards left in their hand, so that starts with -4 points. And then they're going to look and take the lowest card value, which is this 4, -4 plus 4, they're going to end up with 0 points for that round. Over here, they can't get any bonus at all, and they're going to get -6 points because they have 6 cards left in their hand and they don't get any type of bonus. Over here, Delectable's Lickable Treat, they have 2 cards left in their hand, so they start at -2 points, but their lowest card is an 8, so they would get 8 minus 2 for a total of 6. If you still have wilds left over, then those are considered as 0 values, and that's what they would score, 0 points. As I mentioned, there are a couple of variants, one including a threshold scoring, and so you have kind of the rules for that and the card that goes with it. And also, as I mentioned, there are those special animal cards that you can choose to use them for their powers, so they'll do things like, this counts as a single card meld, but it's the strongest of any value. The dowel here can pass the lead. Things along those lines.
That should give you an idea on how these games play. They're relatively simple card games. They play relatively quickly.
And they should be relatively familiar in their genre as well.
Yes, that's true. If you've played a number of trick-taking games, which have been around for years, going back to Hearts and Spades and Pinochle, then you'll see some similarities with Short Zoot Suit. Of what's left is what's called a shedding or climbing type game, and there are many of those out. Haggis, and there's a lot of Tichu. Yeah, there's a lot of those games on the market as well. So, do we want to start with Short Zoot Suit, or well, you know what? Yeah. Before we get to the individual games, let's just talk about the kind of packaging art aesthetic. It's adorable.
It's adorable, yeah. There's not really two ways about that. They clearly are kind of sister games to each other.
They are. Same artist, Sai Beppu, who is well known amongst the card game community, especially in Asia, for creating these just very cute games with delightful art, and that trend certainly continues here. I would say of what's left specifically is my favorite art that she's done.
See, I have to disagree with you on everything that you just said, Mike. Actually, no, just that short Zoot suit's my
It's your favorite?
My favorite.
Yeah.
The different length suits depending on depending on the rank of the card. Yeah. It's just adorable to the point where like the number 2 of each suit is like super short. It's like wearing like a tankini. Tankini the Zoot suit.
It's barely there. And then of what's left, the idea is that you are playing owls that are on guard, and the different values of the cards will represent different, levels of tiredness that they have, and so that you eventually get to the point where in the low cards, the owls are like laying on the ground, barely awake. And the big thing is that you're not going to make games like these typically thematic, right? And that doesn't happen here either. But what it does is it adds character to the game.
Character is like the perfect word to describe that.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, these are games that just, for me, they're very thinky, and yet having this art style is kind of disarming, and it just makes them very welcoming, easy to kind of go into. And I think that while they're thinky, they're also very approachable.
Yes.
So I think that the packaging, the aesthetic, all of that is not just wonderful and cute and everything, but also fits so well with these games.
Yeah, I agree. So let's just talk a bit about each of them in turn, and then at the end we'll give a score for both. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So let's start with Short Zoot Suit, the trick-taking game. This is a game that has a couple of major hooks, right? Because generally speaking, in modern trick-taking games, they're going to have some kind of a hook that sets them apart, usually, right? Almost always. And the experience, the quality of the game, in my opinion, usually is how good is that hook, how unique is it, and does it ultimately add to the experience of the game? So, in Short Zoot Suit, the idea is that you're going to have a hand of cards, as you saw in the overview at the beginning. You'll keep 5, or you'll draw 5 out of those, and you'll put them shuffled face down as a draw deck. And so what's really neat about that is that it can give you the potential at the beginning of a round to completely short suit yourself oftentimes. Sometimes even short suit out of 2,
Maybe,
which may or may not be good because you can't be off suit the whole time. But the ultimate goal is to have exactly the same number of tricks that you've won as you have played off suit. And so that's a really cool hook, in my opinion.
It's kind of 2 hooks, one that leads into the other. The first being creating your own draw pile.
Yep.
And what I like about that so much is that it allows you to have some more say, a little more control over your initial hand of cards in an incredibly clean way.
Right.
I like it where you have a little bit more agency than just, here's the cards dealt to you.
Yeah.
And I played plenty of those trick-taking games.
Sure.
Most of them are that way.
Make the best of what you got, yeah.
Right. But this one's saying, hey, you can kind of like void yourself of an entire suit if you want. Get rid of all your low cards so you have nothing but high. You have too many high cards. You don't want to win too many tricks.
Right.
Get rid of some of those.
Yeah.
And then the other hook about that is that as you're trying to play off suit in equal number of times to the tricks that you've won, you can draw back up into a suit that you didn't have at an earlier point of the game.
Right, that you specifically put out because you wanted to be short-suited, but you knew you can draw it. You don't exactly know if it's going to be the top of your deck, but you know it's in there somewhere, right? It's 5 cards.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with taking several turns to draw back.
Sure.
There's no punishment for having more or anything.
No.
I think that it's a very clever system that I haven't seen before. Because I've seen games where you draw cards up, but not necessarily that put you in the control and the agency to determine what goes into that personal draw deck.
That's the thing, is that, you there are games where you can draw, but you're usually top decking, and you have no idea what's in there. Here, you know exactly what's in there, again, if you can remember it, and you don't and you don't know the order. But that's a really nice thing. And one of my favorite aspects of this part of the design is that while you ultimately want to have an equal number of one tricks and offsuit cards, it doesn't punish you too severely if you don't. I've played some games, trick-taking games, where you have a particular mark, and if you don't hit that mark, you score 0 points, sometimes negative points. I've played plenty of trick-taking games like that. This one, you're always going to get a point for each trick you've won, no matter what. And if you hit it exactly, you paired up exactly the same number of one tricks as off-color, then you get a bonus to the scoring you get for pairs, right?
Yeah.
So you're already going to get, I think, 3 points for each pair you have, but if you hit it exactly, each of those pairs are now worth 5 points. It's a really clever way to do it where you are definitely trying to hit that mark, but you're not completely punished if you don't.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And some rounds, the way that the cards fall, you're just going to win 9 of the tricks.
Yeah.
And say, I got 9 points that round.
Right.
And that's fine because over the course of a few rounds, the game only lasts a few rounds. It's quick. But over the course of those rounds, it'll kind of, the score can even out a bit.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it's great. I think it's well done.
The other last little hook to talk about is they have intermediate scoring cards, which is really nice because you have one at the beginning of the game, and what it means is that not only are you trying to be off-suit a certain number of times, but you're trying to also manipulate the cards that are in your short-suited area because it'll fit some type of requirement in the intermediate scoring. It's really, really cool.
It's neat. It's saying not just am I going to lose this trick, but also how am I going to lose this trick?
Right, yeah. It's neat.
Yeah, there you go. Third hook. So 3 hooks that kind of separate this one.
Right. Why don't you start talking about Of What's Left?
Yeah. So in Of What's Left, the shedding game, where you can go around the table multiple times, you play at melts and such, as per the overview. This is a genre of games I actually tend to like less than trick-taking. I tend to like the tightness of, in trick-taking, every player plays out one card, you determine at that point. But I went into this with an open mind and high expectations, as I said. As a shedding game, this one has, I think, a few hooks that kind of help separate it as well. The first of which, and this has been done before, you have some wild cards that you can work with, so that gives you a little bit more control of how you want to play out your cards.
Right.
But the other main hook of this being, you don't want to be the first person to actually empty out your hand.
Right.
That's a huge difference, and so you score what's
left.
You score what's left. So one of the 2 reviewers just now realized why this game is called what it is, Of What's Left.
It's all right. Your plays were all invalid, but you have time to play the game correctly now.
So you can score what's left in your hand.
Yeah.
Mike saved me.
No, it's all right. I mean, but yeah, that's the idea, right? Is that you want to be ideally the second person to go out with one high card left in your hand. Because you're going to lose 1 point for each card that's left in your hand, and you're going to score the lowest rank that you have of what's left. And so if the lowest rank of what you have left is a king, and you only have one of them, that's great.
That's fantastic.
Right. It's not very hard to pull off, but that's the idea behind that.
But if you pull the Chris Yi strategy, where you have 5 cards left in hand, and your lowest is a 2, you're getting negative points.
You're getting -3 in that situation, right? If you have 5 cards left in hand, that's a bold strategy. I don't know if I'd say good. It's a bold strategy.
So what this does, it creates this great juxtaposition where in a shedding game, I have 3 kings. Of course I'm going to slam those down as soon as I can because I want to take lead. I want to have control of the tempo of the game.
Right.
And then you realize I'm throwing away points
Yes.
by playing my highest cards. So you have this balance of how much are you willing to play your high cards in order to control the tempo versus letting that opportunity go so that you're so that you're in less control but are in a better place to be able to score.
Yeah, no, it's a really neat idea. If there is other games that the shedding games where you don't want to be the first to go out, I almost think there have to be, but I don't know that I've played one. I think this is the first one I've played like that, and so it's a neat little twist to the formula for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some little variation cards.
Right, special cards you can use. That definitely change things up.
Or they can just be a wild. So you have 2 wilds in, that's nice. I like that. I like that flexibility a lot.
Right, you're not having to add components or anything, really. I mean, because, if you're not using them as special cards, you're using them as wilds. So.
Yep.
Yeah, it's great. All right, do we want to get into our final thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, let's start with the short Zoot Suit, the trick-taking game. This is one that feels very fresh to me, right? I've played a lot of trick-taking games, and this one does not feel like other trick-taking games because the hooks in them are so unique. I really, really love this idea of a personal draw deck, right? Small enough that you can, you don't have to be, I don't love memory in games. I'll just put it out there. It's usually not an issue in this game. I can generally remember at least an idea of what I have in there. That's really clever. The idea of at the beginning of any turn, any trick, you can draw if you want to, you don't have to. That notion of winning the same number of tricks as the off-color suits, it's great. I've never played anything like that. The idea is if you play off suit, you keep that in front of you. The person that won the trick doesn't take it. It's just a really neat subversion of what I've been used to in many trick-taking games. And it's not hard to understand, right? Just really clever. I really like that kind of little shake-up to the system.
I forget, did you say your score already?
No, I haven't said my score. Let me say my score. Short Zoot Suit is excellent. I'm giving it an 8.5. This it does enough between the intermediate scoring cards, which are a lot of fun, the draw deck idea, which is really cool, and the major conceit of the game of winning the same number of tricks as you play off suit. Just great, right? Really, really makes it unique and stand out in trick-taking games. So an 8.5 for me.
I wholly agree with you. This is also getting 8.5 for me because it just does so much with so little. The fact that there's not extra componentry and extra pieces to make this more complicated than need be, it's not. It's an incredibly clean system. Just the fact that you pull back a card when you're off suit, and that completely changes the scoring dynamic, does so much with so little.
Right.
It's almost frustratingly brilliant that Taylor could find something in trick-taking and say, what about we do this, and then it creates something new that I haven't seen before.
It's essentially a standard deck of cards, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And there's some special cards that come with it if you buy this packaging.
Right.
And then those interim scorings and stuff. But it really does almost all of that with basically a standard deck.
Yeah.
That's so impressive to me.
Yeah, good stuff. Why don't we snake draft it? You do of what's left.
All right. So of what's left is, I'm just going to say, this is going to be my go-to shedding game.
Okay.
Almost shedding, climbing game.
Right.
This one's getting an 8 from me. I really, really enjoy it. That tension of when you have only a few cards left and you mandatorily must play out.
Yeah.
That king that you held on to is probably going to get played. Or if so it forces you to play in a way that you're just not used to. I love, as you call it, the subversions of the expectations of little card games like this. It's thinky, it's adorable. The biggest holdup for me, I think, is the fact that the rules were a little bit more of a struggle. They are short, they're on one side of a piece of paper, but there were plenty of things we had to kind of like logic and work through and work out.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so a little trickier to kind of get into, but once it did, this one sings for me. So it's an 8 for me.
I'm pretty close to that. I'm coming in at a 7.5. Really, the reason that this one is a little bit lower is, it's not low. It's a good, solid recommendation. Let me put that out there. I recommend it very, very clearly. If I was rating it on art, it would be a 10. Is that this one feels a little more familiar to me than Short Zoot Suit does in its genre. I have played shedding games where you don't necessarily want to be the first to go out. So that was a little bit familiar to me. Just the way that the melds, the way you're playing them feels very familiar, right? But the bonus card is a neat hook, although I know I've played another game with a similar feel to that where you're kind of forced to not be able to pass or you're forced to have to play or something like that. But for what it may lack in innovation, it does very well in just a very smooth, very cool system. It's a rock solid, almost shedding game. 7.5 for me of what's left.
There you go. So of what's left, a high score of an 8, giving this one a seal of approval from us. And then Short Zoot Suit with 2 8.5s, meaning this one gets a seal of excellence. But we heartily recommend both of these.
We do.
Now, before we sign off, I think a quick note that's worth mentioning. These are both games that were, this particular imprint is from Japan.
Yes.
And so
Small print runs.
Small print runs. There's nothing official yet about Short Zoot Suit, but there's mumblings that there will be a reprint or a way in the future.
Right, will be more readily available outside of Japan.
And then of what's left is actually being re-implemented by Bezier Games.
That's correct. That's already been announced, and I think it's going to be coming out relatively soon, maybe Gen Con, perhaps even before, I don't know. But it's called, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, it's called
Sears Catalog, Seers, obviously playing off of the old department store Sears where we used to have a catalog. And that's kind of pretty lightly themed in the werewolf universe, right? Because Bezier has a whole line of werewolf-themed games. But it's essentially of what's left. And so that's going to be much more readily available outside of Japan quite soon. So for those of you who are inevitably going to ask, where can I get these? Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a roadmap on that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming by this review of these two great little card games. Until next time, my name is Chris Yi.
I'm Mike DiLisio.
Have fun falling asleep in your Zoot suit.
That can be painful.
Hey folks, thanks for watching another one of our videos. If you like our videos, if you like our channel, you would love to game with us at one of our conventions. Check out Dice Tower Cruise, Dice Tower East, and Dice Tower West. Fantastic conventions where we play games with wonderful people, a humongous library, and lots of other events and stuff. Also, don't forget to check out our channel, like and subscribe. I'm Tom Bassel.
Hi everybody, I'm Taylor Reiner, and it is Trick-Tapril. And so I'm going to be coming to you with a new video. And I'm Taylor Reiner, and this is Trick-Tapril, and I have a video for you. Wait, so you're telling me that I've been saying my name wrong this entire time? Yes, you've definitely been saying our name wrong for all of these years. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. I think I've been watching too many of DiLisio's videos. It's Reiner, like the designer. Oh, Reiner like the designer. Okay, that makes sense. Which designer?